So this video is in a number of sections. Now I'm just going to run very quickly through a couple of timestamps so you can jump straight to a particular section. Firstly, balls will not bounce back to the original drop height. Why don't they? Why don't they bounce back as high as you drop them from? A stacked ball drop. So one ball sitting on top of another one, or maybe even a three stack. And to explain what's actually going on with the stacked ball drop, well, let's go into a little bit of science. Here's what you came for, the stacked ball drop challenge. And finally, we wrap up the video with how to actually determine the height of a bounce. So now you can watch the whole video straight through or jump straight to any particular section. Here we are on a beautiful spring day. The bees are doing their thing. And Ailish, what are you going to do?
Drop the ball.
Oh, Puppy's back. Okay, that's right, she can stay here. Cinder, come here. Come here. Hey, sit. Sit. Good girl. Stay. Good girl. Say hi to everyone. Hello. There we go. Right, stay. Right, so Ailish, what are you going to do?
Drop the ball.
Drop the ball. You're not going to throw the ball into the ground, are you? You're not going to bounce it down. You're just going to drop it. Right, ready? Okay, that's cool. Now, what we notice,
It gets lower.
it does get lower, doesn't it? It doesn't bounce back as high the first time, and each time actually it bounces lower and lower and lower, doesn't it? Yeah. So you want to drop it from your shoulder height? Yeah, about there. Yep, that did not bounce back as high. What about a different ball? You got it?
Yeah.
Cool. All right, ready? So just hold it out, and it didn't bounce back as high, did it? And it never can it? Do you know why? When you lift something up against gravity, the thing that you just lifted up has energy. Here you are holding a ball that, well, not very round. There we go. Now that ball has this thing called gravitational potential energy. Okay, any mass lifted up a height against gravity, so there's our equation for the GPE, the gravitational potential energy, mass times height times gravity, right? So it has potential energy, stored energy. When you drop that ball and it's now sitting on the ground, well, remember, GPE equals mgh, but if the height is 0, it has no gravitational potential energy. What happened to it? Well, when you dropped it, that falling ball started speeding up. It was accelerated towards the Earth. It was moving. It had kinetic energy. Okay, so what we started with was GPE, and we dropped it and we converted that into kinetic energy. Now, the ball is going to bounce back up. So the kinetic energy is going to be converted back as the ball goes upwards against gravity. It will be converted back into gravitational potential energy, but not all of it. When the ball bounces on the ground, we lose some energy as sound. We also form some heat energy from the friction of the ball, well, that T didn't work, there we go, of the ball slamming into the ground. That means that, actually, if we just draw it down here, we get GPE turn into kinetic, but when it hits, we also get some heat, we get some sound, and this means that we don't have the same amount of energy to put back into the ball bouncing up, okay, because we've lost some along the way as heat and sound. Essentially, energy is always wasted in some way. Nothing is 100% energy efficient. Okay, in this case of bouncing ball, we're wasting energy as heat and sound, so we're not getting the same amount of energy back into bouncing the ball back up into the air. So if it doesn't have enough energy, well, doesn't have as much energy, it can't bounce as high. So a ball will never bounce to the original drop height, not by itself anyway. Okay, so when you drop it, it has some energy, and when it hits the ground, some of that energy actually gets turned into sound and heat energy. So some of the energy is lost and it doesn't have enough energy to bounce back as high. Okay, cool, hey? Here's the thing though. Do you want to hold both balls? Right. Put the little ball on top of the big ball.
Like this?
Yeah. Yeah. Now hold them as straight as you can. Okay. Now hold it out from here. I don't want it to drop on your toe. And let them go at the same time. Oh, what? Where did that little ball go? Oh, you got it. Good girl.
It hit the door.
It did. Okay. Let's go again. Ready? I know. Do it again. Now try and do it as straight vertically as you can because we want the little ball to bounce back up into the air. Ready? Go. Yep, that went pretty high, didn't it?
Yeah.
You don't have to get it, sweetie.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get it. Come back. Well, since you did go and get it, you might as well do it one more time, eh? Cinder. Good girl. Sit. Good girl. Right, when you're ready. Nice one. Now, stop. Leave it. Do you know why it actually bounced back higher than you dropped it from? Because we saw at the start, if you drop a ball, it can never bounce back even to how high you dropped it, let alone higher. Hey, it will always bounce lower, yeah? Because the energy is always lost. But by using this stacked ball drop method, you can get the ball to bounce higher than the drop height. And you did that, didn't you? Absolutely. So let's take a look at that again. I've still got the basketball, but I've got a bigger ball. It might be a little bit easier to see. So the deal is, when you drop a ball, it will never bounce back to the same height. Doesn't matter how high I drop it from, it's never going to drop back to the same height. It will always bounce lower because the energy gets lost from the system. When it hits the ground, it makes a sound. Well, there you go, there's sound energy. When it hits the ground, there's also a bit of friction generating heat energy. So energy is always lost from the system. However, by doing a stacked ball drop, we can actually get the upper ball to bounce back higher than the drop height. So if we try and hold them as straight up and down as we can, otherwise it's just going to shoot off to the side, and let them go at the same time. Did you follow it? Cool. Like that one, and fired off to the side. It's a bit tricky sometimes to get it bouncing straight back up, especially this spiky go. Let's have a look. Coming at you, Ailish. Right, let's try the two balls that Ailish had. We hold them as straight as we can, and now it landed. So that actually had quite a bit of flight time, didn't it?
Yeah.
We'll do one more, and then we'll try a triple stack. So, double stack, ball bounce. Up it goes. That was about the height of the roof line up there. If we use a triple ball, we can actually get even a better result. So let me just get the other one. Now, with three balls, even trickier to balance them and get them up vertical, but we'll give it a go. Right, so the upper ball went over to the neighbour's place, so we'll get that later on. Okay? Now, the energy from one ball gets transferred into the upper ball. And when we have a three stack, then the energy from the lower one gets transferred into the middle, and then adds that to that energy gets transferred to the top one. So it gets a lot of energy, so it fires off, right? Let's take a quick look at a ball hitting the ground. Well, that's not very round. Let's try a nice spherical ball. Oh, that's probably the best I can draw. Here's the ground. So at the moment, the ball has gravitational potential energy. As it's falling, it's converting that energy into kinetic energy. What happens when the ball hits the ground? Remember, it was nice and spherical, and it's just about to hit the ground. Well, what does happen is that the ball actually deforms. It doesn't stay really spherical. I'll draw this as best as I can. That'll have to do. So it essentially gets squashed. It gets compressed. The ball actually changes shape. It gets deformed a bit. What it's doing now is storing some energy in a form called elastic potential energy. This is why the ball bounces back, because it's got that stored energy, which then gets converted back into kinetic energy when the ball bounces back up. We know, of course, we will lose some energy as heat, we will lose some energy as sound, but let's not worry about that for now. So the ball stores energy as it's impacting on the ground, as it's colliding with the ground. It stores the energy as elastic potential energy. That then gets converted back to kinetic energy in the form of the ball moving back up into the air, so it bounced back up. Now let's put a second ball on top of the first. Here we go. Let's make that a complete ball. There we go. And let's draw it down here. There we go. Now, what's going on here with the whole stacked ball drop? Well, there are actually two ways that we can think of it. One way we can think of it is that the top ball, let's just call it the upper ball, gets energy transferred to it from the lower ball. Okay? Now, energy is always conserved. You cannot just create or destroy energy. Okay? It is conserved. But you can quite happily transfer energy from one object to another object. You can also transform energy from one type into another type. We've seen we've gone from GPE to KE to EPE, then back to KE, and then as it loses speed but it's gaining height, it's getting converted back to GPE. So we can change between energy types, and we can change energy from one object to another. So what happens is, here's my initial drop height. Now that upper ball gains some energy from the lower ball when they rebound off the ground. So the upper ball gets more energy than it started with, so it actually rockets up into the sky. The lower ball can't bounce as high as it would have by itself. Let's say the big ball by itself may have bounced back to this height, but because it gave some of its energy, instead it might only bounce back to this height. Okay, the big ball has less energy, and if you do it yourself, just have a close watch, not just on the top ball going high, but also on the lower ball going less high than it would by itself. Okay, so that's one way to think of it. We've got energy transfer from the lower ball to the upper ball. So the upper ball has more energy, which means more energy to convert back into kinetic energy and then to more GPE as it goes even higher. Another way to consider what's going on is to actually look at Newton's laws of motion. Let's look at Newton's third law of motion, which says for every action force, there's an equal and opposite reaction force. Okay, so here's the ground. Here's the ball hitting on the ground. Now, when the ball hits on the ground is going to hit back on the ball. Okay, this is why the ball bounces back, right? For every action force, there's an equal but opposite reaction force. Now, remember we had another ball. Here's a smaller ball on top. Now, let's just say the larger ball was actually just sitting on the ground. It wasn't bouncing at all. It was just sitting there, and you just happened to drop the lower ball on top of it, right? For every action force, when it hits the big ball, there's an equal and opposite reaction force. The big ball hits back, so the little ball will bounce back up. Okay, that's grand. However, now the large ball, having just actually bounced off the ground itself, is moving upwards. So the upper ball isn't bouncing off something that's not moving, it's bouncing off something that is moving towards it. So you see, we don't just have this reaction force here, we have this other force up here as well. So now we're talking Newton's second law of motion, which says that a force acting on a mass is going to accelerate that mass. Great. Well, now we actually have more force pushing up. Okay, we've got the reaction force of the little ball, the upper one, hitting onto the lower one. All right, that force means there's a reaction force pushing back upwards on the little ball, but also we have more force, this stuff here, of the lower ball was already on its way back up anyway, so that's applying more force. Now, if we increase the force, but keep the mass the same because the mass of the upper ball doesn't change at all. So we're not changing the mass, but we're increasing the force on it. That means we're going to also increase the acceleration on it. So it is going to be accelerated back up into the air at a greater amount than if it was just bouncing off something sitting there. Okay, essentially, anything that bounces off something coming towards it is going to be accelerated back up into the air more so than if it were just bouncing off an object that was just motionless.
Now, here's what I thought we could do. A stacked ball bounce challenge. So, basically, I'm setting the challenge for you to go out and have fun. Play with bouncing balls. It doesn't matter what type of ball. A soccer ball, a basketball, a tennis ball, hey, a golf ball if you like. Try it with a double stack and see how high you can get it to bounce. Now I'll show you how you can work out how high the ball goes in a sec. Because if we're just looking, oh, I went up there, what's that? I don't know, was it about 3 meters? Was it 4.5? Well, there is actually a way that we can work that out. Okay, try it with 3 balls and just let me know how you get on. I'd like to make a follow-up video, not necessarily for about the person who got it the highest, although that would be cool. It's a challenge. Try and get it as high as you can, but I would just want you to have fun. And if I could get people getting back to me with submissions, either video, photos, whatever it is, that'd be awesome to make a follow-up video of the stacked ball bounce challenge and just see how you went with having your fun. A couple of things. Number one, maybe not do it right next to the house, because sometimes the upper ball can bounce off with quite a bit of force. I don't want any broken windows. Also, windows aside, I have actually done one time, and it was only a double stack, and the upper ball bounced back and smacked me in the face. So just be careful with what you're doing. Let's put some limits on this. Sort of a height of about 1 to 1.5 meters for the drop height, because I also don't want people to be climbing up, showing up there. Yeah, I don't want people to be climbing up there on the roof thinking that, oh, I'll drop it from higher and then it'll bounce higher. That's not what it's about. Okay, so the challenge is to have fun, to drop a ball from about somewhere between 1.5 meters, 1 to 1.5 meters, so just about here, arm's length out, drop it, but then we can work out how high the upper ball goes. So that's the challenge, and now I'll show you how we actually work out how high that upper ball goes.
We can work out how high a ball bounces by using this equation, this kinematics equation, S equals ut plus half at squared. Oh my goodness, what is this all about? Well, don't worry, we're going to break it down. So S is the displacement. You could also think of that as the distance, the height, if you will, that the ball bounces. Displacement, right? So actually, we're not going to call it displacement, we're going to call it height. So here we go, height of the bounce. U is the initial velocity, so velocity initial, but we don't actually know how fast it's moving at the start, do we? No, we don't. Here's how we deal with that. When a ball bounces up, it follows this nice parabolic path. That's cool. I really don't care what the horizontal distance is, but I do care about the vertical distance that it actually bounces. Now the thing is, the flight time for the up is the same as the flight time for the down. Okay, the ball is accelerated by gravity constantly, so it has a certain amount of kinetic energy, and it's going to be losing that kinetic energy as it goes higher and higher, as it's converted into the GPE, the gravitational potential energy, and then it will be converted back to kinetic energy as it comes back down. So what we can do is this. We can split the flight time in half. The flight time on this half is the same as the flight time on that half. And each of those times is going to be half of the total flight time. So by using this equation and knowing the flight time, we can actually work out how high the ball goes. And we do that like this. If we just consider the second half of the flight, so let's just get rid of this. That didn't occur. We just imagined it. Nope, didn't occur at all. Here we go. So now we've just got the flight time from the top, when the ball's up here, to the bottom when the ball comes back down here. So we can measure the time, right? So we measure the total time and then divide it by 2, So now we're talking the second half of flight time. So the initial velocity, when it's at the very top of its flight, it's gone up, 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 slowing down, still going up, but slowing down, and momentarily stopped, and then speeding up, back down. So that initial velocity was actually equal to 0. So we've got u times t, but that's 0 times t, so we can just get rid of it because 0 times anything is going to be 0. So there we go, our equation's becoming easier already. So now the height is half times a times t squared. Let's just draw that over here. We've got half times acceleration times t squared. Well, acceleration on Earth is 9.81. Right, so there's the acceleration. We know that one, and we can time the flight of the ball. When it does its bounce, we can start a stopwatch, and then we can watch it, and when it comes back down to the ground and bounces again, we can stop the stopwatch. Or we could just video the whole thing and get the time from the video. But remember, we don't want that whole time. What we want to do is take half of the time, and that's what we're going to square. Okay, so if we want to know how high, and this will be actually in meters, assuming that our time is in seconds. Okay, so if we know the time in seconds, take half of it for the second half of the flight, and then whatever the half of the time is, square it, and then times that by 9.81, then divide that by 2, and you've just found the height that the ball went. So now it's up to you. Are you going to accept this challenge?
Like the video, punch that like button. Want to see more videos? Smash that subscribe.